WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by JW Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on the air. Remember, we come to you each and every Tuesday at 2:30. We're on Star Communications TV, Channel 16. We're simulcast on WCLN Radio. Our guest today is a very timely person in the sense of the event that we're having this conversation, and also in the sense of what he does. He's the district attorney for the 5th Prosecutorial District, and he covers not only Sampson, but Duplin, Onslow, and Jones County. Ernie Lee, District Attorney, thank you for being with us. I'll add some additional things to your intro as we go along, because if I would go through your entire bio, we'd probably be here for 20 minutes. Thank you for being here.
Oh, it's great to see you, JW. It's great to be on the show, and I hope that you and all your family are doing well, sir.
Doing well, thank you. I understand that you are, as we are speaking today, going through some issues with COVID, both in your one of your offices or one or two of your offices in the district, as well as quarantine yourself to make sure that you're not asymptomatic or spreading anything.
That's absolutely. And all this came to pass this past week. We've had a couple of positives in my Onslow office as well as my Duplin office. And as a result of that, I was in contact with at least one of those persons in the Onslow office on Monday and Tuesday. So I decided to self-quarantine, and I plan on getting a test later today.
Well, we got a lot I want to try to cover today, Ernie, and there's actually kind of three particular areas of conversation I would like to get your commentary on. And of course, one of those is the world of COVID and how it's impacted the judiciary, your office area, and just generally the kinds of things you do, which is critical to our whole democracy. The other thing I wanted to kind of touch on, which is I think a big deal too, is an understanding of the rule of law, given everything that has happened and precipitated our meeting and conversation today. And then maybe close out with some of those current laws that are now in effect in 2021 that the folks, that literally they need to know about and understand it's happening. So let's start with that COVID issue and look at it from your seat as district attorney with multiple employees and 4 counties you're involved in here in North Carolina. How has that impacted you and the judiciary?
Well, as I tell you, it's had a tremendous impact. You know, what's strange is a year ago, I'm not sure any of us would ever envision would be wearing masks this year. Secondly, I don't think any of us ever even heard the term of social distancing. Yet now we've been living it since at least March of 2020. It's had a tremendous impact upon my office. We've been able to keep the offices open, but we've had to go to staggered scheduling, which means I only have maybe a third to a half of the people there at any time. That way, in case someone does get sick, not the entire office may not have to be out. I'm glad I did that this past week in my offices because we're still able to remain open. We're doing that because we still have to serve the public, because just because there's a pandemic doesn't mean there still are not criminal cases. It does not mean there are no victims. It does not mean there are law enforcement issues. So I need to have someone at the office at all times if I can. Scheduling has been a real challenge for the past year. I had 3 first-degree murder trials scheduled for 2020. We're not able to get any of those done. So that means they've been pushed off to 2021, in addition to all the others that have come in. So that scheduling has been an issue. However, I can tell you, we've been working with the judges, and I have every day I'm speaking to at least one of my senior resident Superior Court judges and about scheduling, about COVID-related issues. We've also, in my district, we've had a really strong relationship with the health director, particularly in Onslow County, and just trying to gauge the numbers, because that is so very important. Because in a jury trial, that means we've got to bring in a bunch of jurors. We have not been doing so because we did not want to put the citizens and jurors at risk by coming in. So we've been able to get a lot of pleas done. We've been able to get a lot of other things done. We just can't get the trials done.
Ernie, when we think about a jury and selecting jurors, given the environment with COVID, can you do a jury trial with a virtual jury?
Probably not. And here's the reason I say probably not, is it's not been tested yet, but our statutes do require that the defendant have access, which, it's kind of unusual what that word means, but have access to the jurors. I can tell you, I expect if we were to try to do something like that, it would not be allowed, because here's another thing. The jurors are supposed to gather together under our statute. And if you're virtual, I'm just not sure that could happen. I tell you, another issue that's coming up, JW, is that the wearing of mask in the courtroom. Our senior resident Superior Court judge for all 4 counties came up with a protocol that whenever we start back jury trials, everyone's supposed to wear a mask during the trial. There have already been motions filed about that from the defense counsel, indicating that it's a violation of their client's due process rights to wear a mask in the courtroom, because they cannot see facial expressions, they cannot see the person's face, their full face. So we got to deal with that issue. We're also dealing with another issue too about testifying remotely. In North Carolina, we do have the capacity to testify remotely, which would be very helpful in a pandemic. However, it requires the consent of the defendant. We've not obtained any defendant's consent yet for that. It's not to say it won't happen, but so far we've not been able to obtain the consent of any defendant to allow us to proceed with that, even when we do resume trials. So we've got a lot of things up in the air right now. Remote testimony, whether or not that will be permissible. The mask wearing, whether or not that will be an issue in terms of due process. And out there, we've also got defendants who have filed speedy trial motions. Well, we've had some of those files since March when this began. Well, obviously, we could not do trials between March and we tried a small trial in November, did not work out because we had some people get sick. So we had those issues come up. We got a lot of issues up in the air right now, JW. And that's just not me. The other 42 elected DAs in the state are having to deal with the same issues. All the judges are having to deal with these same issues. Law enforcement, the magistrates, judges. I cannot tell you that it shut our system down, because it has not, but it has certainly made it challenging in 2020, and I believe into 2021, to get cases done.
As you were talking, it just strikes me that it's important for folks to understand that you're dealing with a system, and your job and what you do affects and impacts both the law enforcement people, the judiciary people, and the incarceration side of the house, which we have seen on media releases where folks are actually being let out early because of the COVID situation in various situations, those non-violent offenders or what have you. How is this working when you continue to see the court system increase in numbers of cases that need to be adjudicated, and yet you know that our jails and detention facilities continue to be full and are considered in many cases super spreaders of the disease?
Yeah, it's been a real challenge to deal with all those issues, because we're having to balance not only the rights of victims, and victims do have rights in the state, we're also having to balance safety of the public, and we're also having to balance the due process rights of the defendants. It is an incredible balancing system here, trying to do all these things. The only way you can really do it is have open communication. We've been doing that with the defense bar, as well as with the judges, as well as with law enforcement. Every day I am on the call, I'm on the phone or WebEx or Zoom with someone from all of my counties dealing with these issues. I've had a lot of attorneys contact me about their clients who are in jail right now. When can they get their cases done? Obviously, if they're guilty pleas, we can get those done sooner rather than later, and we have been doing that this year. But if they're trials, it's an issue. But I will say this, I've got 4 great bars to work with, defense attorneys to work with, because they know what's going on too, because they're dealing with the same situation, the same issues we are. I've got great judges who are very proactive, Judge Stevens and Judge Henry, who are just very proactive on this. And then the clerks of court and sheriffs, police chiefs have been great to work with this year. This system would have collapsed had it not been cooperation and collaboration among all the parties I just mentioned. But we've worked through it this year as best we can. And frankly, despite the challenges of getting cases done, I've looked at the stats for this year, and I keep track of all 4 of my counties on a weekly basis. For the year in Sampson County, we disposed of 899 guilty pleas in cases disposed in Sampson County this year. That's 899 cases, which is still a little lower than what we normally would do, but still a pretty commendable number considering the challenges that we had. For the district, all 4 of my counties, 3,407 cases were disposed of in Superior Court this year. And again, those were with some weeks we'd only have like a couple of days of court because of COVID issues that arose. Those, despite the fact that we could not get any jury trials done, despite the fact that we've had a lot of personnel out with COVID, bailiffs, clerks, assistant DAs, law enforcement personnel, despite all that, we disposed of over 3,400 cases in Superior Court this year in my district. And I can tell you that's because we've had hard work from the prosecutors, hard work from the defense counsel, hard work from the clerks and from the sheriff's offices.
And these are the kinds of things we face regularly. We got about a 45 seconds here before we're going to have to go to break. So I wanted to try to get this in. We might have to pick it up after break. If we do, that's fine. But I want to get this in as it relates to mask wearing. One of the things that we're looking at is the governor's order, everything from mask wearing to not being in public places at 10 o'clock. How has that, and I'll stage this in such a way, maybe we can pick it up after break. So let's go ahead and do that. So when we come back from break, I want you to address that and give us some commentary on it in the sense of what that is and how it's affecting your office, how it's impacting the judiciary, and different law enforcement agencies have indicated they're going to enforce it in different ways.
Yes,
so,
right.
Ladies and gentlemen, when we come back, stay tuned. We're going to be talking about additional things related to the judiciary, law enforcement, and criminal justice. We'll be back in a moment.
Experiencing slow internet? If you have a fast internet package, the problem is most likely your wireless router. With more devices using Wi-Fi, your wireless router may not be able to deliver the speed and coverage you need. We now have the leading solution to enhance your internet experience. Using small devices in a mesh network, these Wi-Fi appliances cover just about any size home so that all your devices can operate to their fullest potential. Whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Get the most out of your internet connection.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on there. My name is JW Simmons. I'm your host. We're talking with District Attorney Ernie Lee. Ernie, I want to just make a comment. I want to thank you for your military service. You were an officer in the military with JAG Corps there, and a lot of people don't understand what a dedicated public servant you have been over years of service, not only with the military, but as I talk to you, it occurs to me also that you've been in the district attorney's office and a large portion of that, the district attorney for the 5th district for well over 25 years.
Yes, sir. I just hit my 34th year, believe it or not.
Wow.
I was an assistant DA for 24 years in this district and 10 years now as DA. The time has flown by. It seemed like only yesterday that I swore in. I actually swore in as an assistant DA on January 7th, 1987. So that was yesterday.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And then I had the privilege of serving in the United States Army Reserve as a judge advocate, as an officer. I was stationed at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, as well as Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Surprisingly, the Army did not make me a prosecutor. They made me defense counsel. Mm-hmm. But I learned a lot, and I got to represent a lot of soldiers through the years in North and South Carolina. And but yeah, I did enjoy my time there. I retired from the Army Reserve, and I can tell you, I was always just honored I was able to serve.
Well, I'm sure a lot of us can remember Dewey Hudson when he was district attorney, and you worked very closely with Dewey there and just moved right on into it. It was a natural inclination for you, but it's always important, I feel, for me to call out that amount of public service that you have lent literally the majority of your entire life to.
You know, this district is very interesting. Since 1949, we've had 4 elected district attorneys, which is probably unheard of in the state or even in the nation. We had Walter Britt from Sampson County,
Mhm.
who was a district attorney from 1949 up until the 70s, early 70s. Then Bill Andrews, who was from Duplin County. He was DA until 1998. And then Dewey Hudson became the DA. And then I became the DA in 2011. And Bill Andrews worked for Walter Britt. Dewey Hudson worked for Bill Andrews as well as me. I work for Bill as well. And then I worked with Dewey Hudson. And so we've always had that continuity here.
You're standing on some strong bedrock there, and we're fortunate to have a lineage like that in this district to lean on. And with that said, I want to transition. As we went to break, we were talking about the mask wearing and the governor's order and what all that contained. There's a lot of descriptive things in the various orders that Governor Cooper has pointed out and brought out, and you are well aware of this. Has there been an issue for you in the district, in any one of your counties, where you've actually had to look at and move toward enforcement or citations for people not complying with the governor's order?
We've been very fortunate in this district. This issue came up early back in March, last March, when the governor's directives and orders were being issued, as well as the chief justice's orders that were being entered. We have been pushing for voluntary compliance. And I have worked closely with all 4 of my sheriffs and several of my police chiefs in this district to encourage people to voluntarily comply. So far, we've not had to issue any citations. And that's not unheard of, because there's some other DAs I've spoken to, same thing. There have been some people that have resisted. However, once they were talked to by law enforcement, they decided to comply. I mean, the bottom line is you're not coming into the courthouse unless you got a mask on. I mean, that's the bottom line. And if you remove your mask while you're in the courthouse, you're going to be asked to put it back on. If you do not, you will be leaving the courthouse. So therefore, we've got some strict rules, but again, these rules are in place because we've got to protect everyone. This has got to be a collective thing. And it's not just the individual rights here. We got to look at the collective rights. And our law enforcement has done a very good job in educating people and telling them what the rules are. Some people, frankly, don't know when they get to the courthouse. They didn't know they're supposed to wear masks. It's kind of hard to believe sometimes, but some don't know. However, masks are then provided to them that have been purchased by the state of North Carolina to make sure they do have a mask. But I can tell you, the ones I've dealt with in court, I've had a couple show up. I'll see it in office, not have a mask. I'll tell them, look, you got to wear a mask. And if you don't wear a mask, you're not going to be allowed to meet with any prosecutors, and they will comply. And so therefore, it's been a challenging year in educating people. It's been a challenging year to get everyone to wear masks that come to the courthouse, but we've been very, very successful in doing so.
Do you see an uptick in violent crimes and domestic issues that you can sense that are directly related to, in some way, the COVID confinement orders and those kinds of things? Or is it pretty much, does the numbers pretty much look normal as you look now back at 10 months ago?
You talking about in terms of dispositions, or?
Yeah, and the number of cases that you've had to look at where people have, there's some evidence out there that psychologically people, after confined at home for so long, there's, kind of become conflict oriented. And I'm just wondering if that is anything you've noticed uptick in the district.
That's an excellent question. As a matter of fact, we have. I've been dealing with a lot of assaultive behavior, communicating threats, and things such as that, which appear, domestic violence, which appear to be directly related to people having to stay home, some people losing their income or their jobs, which is very sad, and then being in closed quarters. And we've had an uptick, it appears, in assaultive behavior. I cannot tell any murders have occurred as a result of that. However, we've had a lot of assault on females and other domestic violence type situations. And we've had some people indicate the reason was because they really were just stuck in the house together. But, even though if you are stuck in the house with someone, if you're quarantined with someone, you still got to exercise good sense, good judgment, good discretion. And even if you disagree about something, violence is not going to work. That is not the right answer. You've got to work it out, which means if you've just got to go to separate rooms for a while, you got to do it. Some of these cases too, I've seen that when people are at home, there seems to be a tendency sometimes for alcohol abuse. And I can tell you that alcohol, abuse of alcohol can create issues. And I've seen that tied many times in a lot of the domestic violence cases that we dealt with for the past several months. Holidays are always a very busy time for law enforcement, as you very well know. And families are getting together. There's usually alcohol. Unfortunately, lately we've had not only alcohol, but guns involved. And that is a bad combination right now, alcohol and drug and guns. So
and employment adds to that as well, Bernie. I mean, Ernie, because if I look at it from an employment situation, and then we add all the things you're just talking about, it really explodes the dynamic within a confined house in which people are unemployed. They're worried about their income, their car payment, even the light bill they're worried about. And then all of a sudden you add some of the things you're talking about. That becomes extremely explosive, does it not?
Oh, it does. It does. And our biggest concern is always that it's going to turn into a murder situation. And that is one thing that every murder is senseless. But those in the domestic environment should be avoidable, because I would hope that the person who's considering doing some violent act against another would reconsider and think about the implications, not only on their own life, because they're probably going to prison, but the implications on the lives of those left behind once you've killed someone. And I see far too often people will pull that trigger, and in that split second, you cannot get that bullet back. You cannot get it back. But the moment that bullet leaves the gun, so many lives are changed and affected. I deal with it all the time. I was just on the earlier this week on a WebEx with a family who had lost a loved one. And it's a very much extended family. It's a large family. The dozens of people that have been adversely affected by the loss of this loved one. And I feel like people don't think about that before they do these acts. They don't think about whose others' lives are they going to affect other than their own. Of course, it's going to affect the victim's life because they're going to pass away. But how about all the other family members out there? And I see it on all the time. There's nothing sadder too than to have like a mother or a father killed, and there's young children left behind. That is just heartbreaking. And I deal with a lot of those families, but I never really know long-term whatever happens to them, because once I finish the case, I don't have contact with those children very often. But I always wondered long-term whatever happened to a lot of those children.
I think that's the sad piece that a lot of us look at. And when I talk to folks that are involved in foster care businesses and those kinds of things and trying to look out for kids and social service folks, it's really tragic. And to some degree, what you see has got to be horrific when you see it on the side in which you're engaged in it, because then everything has exploded.
Oh, absolutely. And I've seen the devastation that this causes to the family unit in this nation. And I've seen what it does to spouses, to fathers, to mothers, to brothers, to sisters, and to children. I have seen it. One thing I've noticed through the years too, that no matter who the victims are, and whether they be rich, poor, Black, white, Hispanic, male, female, no matter who the victims are, all the tears are always the same. And I have seen that repeatedly. I have handled in excess of 135 murder cases as a prosecutor in my career. So that's 135 different families I have dealt with. And I see the devastation that it can cause.
Well, I want to thank you for that comment. And when we come back, I want to talk about something that's clearly on the radar for you and should be society as we talk today. And that's something called the rule of law. And I think it's very important that we hear from you as district attorney what that means, what the impact is, and what we need to know to kind of settle us
Many things have been stolen away during this time of uncertainty. No crowds to cheer on their favorite teams. Applause and pageantry have been stripped away. Thieves are looking to make your home empty and silent. Star Communications has the answer you are looking for. Security by Star. Automation and affordability along with friendly service makes for a security choice that is sure to keep your family cheering.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on there. I want to thank you for being with us today. I want to remind you can reach us via email at weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. Give us your suggestions, comments, ideas, things you saw, like, dislike, would like to see more of. Certainly, we build the show around information and education to try to keep the public not only informed, but to a large degree, educated. And over the past 10 plus years now that we've been doing this, I have very much leaned heavily on your commentary, on suggestions you have sent to us. Our post office box is Post Office Box 1482, Clinton, North Carolina, 28328. That's We Should Know, Post Office Box 1482, Clinton, North Carolina. Our guest today is the District Attorney for the 4th Prosecutorial District, Ernie Lee. Ernie, I've known you for a long time. You've been in the business, as we talked about a while ago, for a long time. There's a lot of issues. Where we sit today, we're in a, and I'll use the word, there's been so many words used, chaos. It's been, I guess, everything from tragic right on around used to unprecedented. But it just seems we're in a volatile time in our social relationship capability, our ability to get along and have different views and opinions. One of the things strikes me, and you and I have had this conversation in the past, is trying to help folks understand what the rule of law is, which is founded to a large degree, as you know, in our Constitution. It's founded and it's part of, which a lot of folks don't understand, but it actually is a piece of our selective freedom of this country and this wonderful country we live in. Tell us what we need to kind of reflect on here to understand there's certain things we just cannot do with not only out being challenged, but without literally getting into trouble. And some of them are so obvious to some of us, but I guess temperaments are such that they render the capacity to stop not important. So I'll just open it up. The rule of law, what does that mean to you as district attorney?
Well, I tell you what, without rules, our society will not function. And as an attorney, as a district attorney, I very much believe that we've got to have rules, we've got to have laws. And if you do not agree with those laws or those rules, you go to the legislature in a lawful sense and ask that those be changed. We are part of a constitutional republic here. The United States has got an incredible democracy. We all ought to be very proud of it, but we can only keep it if we all endeavor to keep it. We've seen so many nations around the world that too have constitutions, but ignore them. This is the nation, though, we cannot ignore our Constitution, or otherwise we will cease to be in a republic as we know it to be as today. We have a constitutional republic. We also have a representative democracy, which means we elect people to make our laws. And again, if we are not happy with a law, the appropriate thing to do is to contact your representatives, contact your senators at the state level, and then contact your representatives and senators at the national level and make your voice heard because they do represent us. That's how you change the law. You cannot change the law by resorting to violence. You cannot change the law by rioting, by doing harm to others. That is not an effective or an appropriate or a lawful way to change. Now, in this nation, we do have the constitutional right to protest, but that is peaceful protesting. That is supposed to be peaceful. You cannot be injuring other people. You cannot be harming property. You do not have a constitutional right to hurt people. You do not have a constitutional right to damage property, personal, state, or private, or public. That is not one of our rights. And I think one of the things we need to remember in this country, a lot of people have fought, served, and died to protect our liberties. They give us the liberty to speak out, to have freedom of speech, to have freedom of the press, to have freedom to associate ourselves with others, the freedom to assemble peacefully. We have a lot of rights in this country. But again, those rights cannot infringe upon the rights of others who also have rights. And that's one of the things we need to remember. We're all Americans. Now, we're never going to agree 100% on anything. No nation in this world does. And we in the United States, we have our individual rights, and we have the right to express our opinions. That's what makes us a great democracy. However, in saying that, though, we've got to preserve it. We've got to follow the laws. And laws are meant for all of us. We cannot be selective on those laws that we wish to follow. The law is the law is the law. And I feel very, very strongly about that. The only way this system will work is if we follow the law. If you do not like the law, request that the law be changed in a lawful manner. As a prosecutor, I will enforce the law, because my duty as a prosecutor, I have a sworn duty. I have made an oath to defend the federal and state constitutions, and I take that very seriously. But in saying that, I want people to know there are protections out there. As a prosecutor, I have a lot of discretion. And I have a lot of discretion in choosing how to proceed in cases. Because again, I will enforce the law, but I've also got to make sure that justice is done. And justice means many things to different people, depending where you're at in the system. But I will also make sure that discretion is done. That justice is done. One of the things I also look at as a prosecutor is strength of case. And I say those three words a lot in my offices to my prosecutors. And I say to law enforcement, strength of case. On any case, anything out there, it's not what you think happened. It's not what the public may believe has occurred. It may not be what the emotions are telling everyone. I read the papers too, and I see some things that I know are not accurate on Facebook and social media. It's not what people are saying out there. It's what does the evidence show, the admissible evidence. And I always look at strength of case. What can we actually prove beyond a reasonable doubt in court? But again, I am very much in favor of the rule of law. Our nation is founded on that. And it cannot function as a constitutional republic unless we all believe and try to preserve it. And so it saddens me, some of the things I've seen. It saddens me what I saw the other day at the Capitol.
I think one of the things that strikes me in your commentary is that when I look back at the framers of the Constitution, they were very well aware of how the rule of law was important to be able to ensure the freedoms that we have. It's almost like oftentimes you look at it as two opposite things, but when you look at it from the sense of the constitutionality of it, the rule of law ensures that there's certain things we can do, certain voices we can have, but it does limit when it impinges on somebody else's ability to function, or when it destroys, as you pointed out, others' property. So are we missing something, Ernie, when we look back now at basic, what I call is fundamentals of education? Or do you think we're doing enough in the basic education process of our society to educate people on how we are established as a government and the importance of all things, that Constitution that we sometimes look at as something that happened way back in the 1700s and not really see it as an important critical document?
I think there is a lack of education concerning these issues. I think that starts also with the schools. I'm not sure that there's enough emphasis placed on our government in terms of education about government, about our Constitution, about our history. When I was actually in school in California, my dad was in the service, we were required in California in high school to take a whole semester on the Constitution, the United States Constitution. And one of the best classes I ever took, because it made us read it and it made us discuss it. and it made us learn about it. And I think that is very much lacking in the school system. But it also starts at home. I mean, nothing prevents everyone from just picking up a copy of the Constitution and reading it. The Constitution, the United States Constitution, is actually a very short document. You can sit down and within 30 minutes, you can have it read. It's a very short document, which shows how great our framers were in being able to be able to draft such a very short document that has stood the test of time for well over 200 years. And so anyone can sit down and read it. I hear this a lot when I'm at the office, usually from those charged with different offenses. They'll say, look, that violates my rights. And of course, what they're saying, I'll ask, what right are you even talking about? And they're not able to give an answer. Or if they give an answer, it's not a right that's part of the Constitution. I've noticed that. And you do not have the right to do damage to someone's property. That is not a right. You do not have the right to forcibly enter a Capitol building or a legislative building without authorization. You don't have the right to go into a government building and take property. That is not a right as an American. Now, you have the right to peacefully assemble outside of those buildings, and maybe inside you've been authorized. You have the right to do that as long as you're peaceful. And I think there's a lot of misconception out there of what our rights are. But people need to read it. You can read the Bill of Rights. Just read the First Amendment. You can read that in 15 seconds. And it'll tell you what your rights are about speech and press and religion and the freedom to assemble.
I'd like to sometime get you back. Let's just do a whole show on the Constitution and rule of law. I think we could certainly do that. We're going to take another break. I would encourage people in kind of prepping for this conversation with you today. I struck an article by James McLennan that talked about liberty, order, and justice, which covered exactly what you're talking about, and it went into depth. So I encourage people to kind of let us know what you think about our conversation today, and encourage folks to let us know if we need to dig deeper in that, because you're just a person that could, to inform us and let us better understand the depth and breadth of that. So we're going to take another break. We're going to be back in a moment, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to talk about new laws coming up here in North Carolina in 2021 that you need to know about, and you're going to hear it from the district attorney. So call a friend, stay tuned.
To get the most out of your electronic devices, you need a strong internet connection and a protected home Wi-Fi network. You need high-speed internet from Star. Star has the fastest, most affordable high-speed internet service available for all your devices. We have no long-term contracts or high-pressure sales. Our service speaks for itself, and switching is hassle-free. We take care of everything with free installation from a local company. High-speed internet from Star. Internet at the speed of life.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on the air. I'm JW Simmons, your host. Want to make sure that you understand today that we're talking about critical and not only critical, but issues that are facing us not only at the moment, but are affecting our lives in the future, because we're talking with Ernie Lee, the district attorney for the 5th Prosecutorial District. Ernie, we mentioned a while ago the years of service, 34 years you've been involved in this, both in the public sector and with the military. You've seen a lot of things. Do you see, as we look at these new laws in 2021, do you see us any more at a critical juncture in our journey as a country as we look toward 2021?
I hope this nation can unite in 2021. We should always support the president, no matter who that person is. We should always support good government. We should always support our legislature and our courts, because again, they represent us, they reflect us, frankly. I'm hoping that we can remember that first and foremost in 2021, that despite our political divisions, we're still Americans first. We are Americans. And the world, I think, loves it when the United States is divided. I am certain Russia and China and North Korea and Iran, they love it when our nation is divided. And we've got to realize that we are first and foremost Americans. We've got to get that feeling that we had when 9/11 occurred, when we were attacked. Or as my grandparents used to talk about, when Pearl Harbor was attacked in 1941, where the nation became united against a common enemy, a common foe. And we got to set aside our partisan differences. We've got to set aside our differences in this nation. One of the things that's made our nation great is because we are different. We bring in everyone, every culture. And that's what makes our nation great. And I just hope that maybe in 2021 we can have a different, different view on things, and maybe decide, look, let's truly be the United States of America.
Good, very good comment. I totally agree with you. And I think to that degree, media, people that work in media, have got to do a good job in kind of helping us understand and blend our differences together. Robust conversation, diversity is a critical part of what we are as a society, as you pointed out. But we don't need to compare two bads to see which one is worse. I think that's one of the horrible things we do too often. One group did this. Well, this other group did this. Well, this one was as bad as if we get into that, it seems to me that's a dead end road.
Absolutely, because we also got to remember we have diverse opinions, but there's nothing wrong with that. That makes it for a vibrant democracy.
Absolutely.
We don't want to live in a nation where you can never provide your opinion. But in terms of providing your opinion, it means you got to listen to someone else's opinion. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing, because we are a diverse nation. But again, that's what's made us great. That's what has made us the greatest nation that's ever been in this world. And we're all very fortunate of where we live. I've said this before when I speak to students, that over half the world's population would love to be in this country right now. And no matter what our differences are, no matter what our issues are in this country, there are people that would trade places with us in a heartbeat just to live in the United States of America. And I just hope that this year can be a different year, that 2021 and for the future, that again, we just realize we're all Americans, because we are. And here in North Carolina, we're all North Carolinians. And
speaking of which, in 2021, we had some new laws that come into effect.
Yes, sir.
And I know that is important for you and your office to make sure folks are informed on that. And we mentioned a while ago something called raise the age. There's a law, raise the age funding. There's a law about raise the age. What is all that about, and other laws that has impacting and will be impacting us in 2021?
Our legislature actually the last few years has actually been trying to reform some of the criminal justice system. And again, because the criminal justice system is always changing, because our society changes to some extent. And, they're trying to make some changes. One of those changes is about the juvenile laws. And obviously, well, now in North Carolina, juvenile will be treated from below the age of 18. It used to be in North Carolina, at the age of 16, you were treated as a criminal adult, which means if you were charged at the age of 16 with any criminal offense, you would be treated as an adult, treated as just like anybody 25 or 35 years old. Mm-hmm. Now they've changed it. They've raised the age to 18, which means those 16 and 17 now will be treated as juveniles unless some designated exception occurs. Like, for example, if it's a very serious offense, the district attorney can come in and, in fact, still move that to adult court after hearing. I did that I just did one of those recently, where I actually had it transferred to Superior Court because it was a kidnapping type case involving a 16-year-old, and kidnapping and larceny of a motor vehicle and some other criminal offenses. And I decided this needs to be an adult court because the actions were so bad. But that's one of the biggest things we've had come facing us. And I tell you, it's changed our system a lot, because all of a sudden, too, law enforcement's had to put more resources into the juvenile system, because suddenly we have a large number of people that before were treated as adults that are now being treated as juveniles, 16 to 17-year-olds, which means a lot of resources with the sheriff's office and the police departments in this district and the state have had to go for juvenile court. And juvenile court takes a lot longer than what it does in, say, traffic court. If a juvenile is charged with an offense and goes before a judge, you're generally looking at 1 hour to dispose of that case. Because the juvenile, you got to go through so many different questions of a juvenile before they can enter a plea of guilty. Whereas in district court, someone walks in with the same charge, they can be out in less than 5 minutes. So we've had to put a lot more resources into prosecutors, into clerks, because our juvenile courts have expanded so much with this new law. And I'm not saying it's a bad law, because I think it's actually, there are going to be those cases where 16 and 17-year-olds, as we very well know, are maybe not mature enough, or do not have the mental capacity to be prosecuted in adult court. But there are going to be those cases also the prosecutors can look at an individual case and actually take those to adult court, like I did recently. Another big law that's come up that is really people really know about is called the Second Chance Act. That is something that people need to look at, because this actually deals with expungements. And it deals with people that may have had a criminal offense in their background, but many years have passed since that time. Many years have passed. And since that time, either they served their time or they completed their probation. But since that time, they've been out and they've raised a family, got a job. They're just good citizens. But they still had that on the record. The legislature has expanded the expungement laws in the state a lot over the past 2 years, including some for this year. And that is one thing I would encourage listeners, that if you have a prior conviction, and since that prior conviction, that you've been living a good life, raised a family, got a job, do all those things a good citizen does, that maybe you might be able to get that expunged, even though you pled guilty or were found guilty. Now, again, I can't go through all the rules on this program because it would take too long. Mm-hmm. But what I would request people to do is check the statutes, or speak with an attorney, or go by the clerk's office and find out what you can do about that. We've had quite a few lately here in Onslow County of the past 2 years, particularly United States Marines, who may have committed an offense, say back in the 1980s. They were discharged from the Marine Corps from that. But since that time, they went out and got jobs, have been great citizens. Some of them are now in their 40s and 50s at this time. And they wonder, how can I get this charge? This like a simple assault off my record from 1982. And we've been able to do that for them. And I mean, that is such a good thing. It's interesting. One individual called me the other day and he said, back in, I think it was 1979, he had a firearms violation. And back in 1979. And since that time, he's not been able to have own or possess a firearm. But he said, I got grandchildren now. I'd very much like to go hunting with them. And we checked into it. He got an attorney and we were able to work it out, where he's now got that expunged off his record. And he's had a perfect record since that one violation back in 1979. And as a result of that, he's able to now go hunt with the grandchildren because he now can possess a firearm.
Does that expungement apply only to state or is state and federal offenses?
It'll be for state offenses in North Carolina. Federal would have to go through the federal system with the U.S. Attorney's Office.
So two different kind of applications.
So what we had to look at in our state would simply be state convictions. But again, I just think it's something that people need to be aware of. Some people live their entire life knowing they may have gotten expunged. And that is so very important because people are embarrassed maybe by something they did 25 years ago. But yet, there are statutes out there that may assist them. And I would encourage people to take a look at that. Look on just Google expungement or Second Chance Act, North Carolina Second Chance Act, or expungement North Carolina. There's going to be a lot of things come up, and it's something I think they can have addressed.
Well, Ernie, we're kind of coming to the close of the show. I want to give you about 30 seconds to wrap up. And again, just know you always have a seat at this table. Anytime you want to come back, love to have you. And there's so many topics we could talk about, but I think we've hit a few of the key points. And I give you 30 seconds to wrap up here.
I'll tell you what, 2020 has been a very challenging year for not only our nation, but for our state with COVID. We've had a lot of challenges in the criminal justice system for the past year. But again, showing how great our framers were of the Constitution. Our system is held, it continues to work. And I'm proud to be part of this system.
Ernie, thank you for being with us. Ernie Lee, District Attorney for the 5th Prosecutorial District. We look forward to seeing you again right here on We Should Know each and every week. And as we always say when we leave, may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host JW Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.